Hi. One of the things about, when we first come to get sober, it seems about disconnecting from our emotions, about putting them up, our impulses, our drives, our cravings, putting them aside. But the key to long-term sobriety and intimacy with God, ourselves, and other human beings is actually the ability to surrender the full range of our emotions to the 12 steps. There's a psychological truism that you can only be as intimate as you are angry. To just disconnect from our anger, our fear, our loneliness, our need for love is not a long-term solution. And our member that's coming up now, I heard her describe how to do that in a way that I wanted to share with everyone. So please share, our speaker.
Thank you so much, Jane and everyone else, for the opportunity to talk to you today. This is the last thing I would have expected to do, but I am happy to do it because this is really one of the calls that has been a lifeline for me in recovery. Today makes 149 days since I drove 2.5 hours one way to go to my first meeting because I was in a lot of despair. I didn't know what to do. Sometimes I wanted to die, but I didn't have the nerve to do anything to myself. So 149 days of the program, 131 days no contact with my qualifier, and 108 days sober. I feel like I've been running away from God for a long time. I felt very entitled and justified in my behavior. And I was the queen of justifications because I listened to my parents. I went to school. We had tutors, and we had homework for school, homework for tutors. We followed the plan, and it was always, there's not going to be any time to date. You have one hand for the Bible and one hand for your schoolwork, for your school books. And when I got my period, I was 10 and a half. My mom said to me, "Don't let boys play with you." And I didn't understand what that meant because the only thing I did with boys at the time was we played together, we played marbles, we, did other things. And I couldn't understand why. But then later on in my life, I began to think to myself as I went on in puberty, I wondered, well, if they can't play with me, can I play with them? So I became very sneaky, extremely selfish. And I felt very needy for love, very needy for attention, getting whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted it, because I felt that I had earned it. And I was taking care of other people, and I was not doing any self-care. So that was just one reason after another that I was indulging. And I felt quite superior to people who were alcoholics and drug addicts because I felt like they had failed at life, and I couldn't understand why they had that problem because I've never been tempted to drink to excess. I've never been drunk, and I've never done drugs. I've never smoked, so I always thought that I was better than those people. So when I came into the rooms, because I was desperate and in a lot of pain, and I literally felt like I couldn't breathe because I was in so much pain, I felt like I officially failed at life, but I still felt like I was not a real sex addict. I didn't really believe that there was such a thing. I just thought people who said that were just looking for an excuse because they were ashamed of what they were doing, whereas I was not ashamed of what I was doing. I simply wanted to find a way to quickly get rid of the pain and then go back to what I was doing. I went to one meeting. They said, keep coming back. I loved the meeting. It gave me a lot of relief. But I figured if I really went back, it would be more to socialize, not because I needed it. And but in less than a week, I was running back to that meeting, and I found myself feeling shocked that I was actually back in the room and shocked that I needed to be there. And I'm very grateful because even though I was openly contemptuous of people who had addictions, they were kind, they were loving to me, which is something I was not giving myself. So they gave me the love that I needed, and people really carried me in the program. I'm already crying. I'm sorry. And I remember thinking, I'm not a real sex addict. And I would think about particular people that I knew were like true blue sex addicts, and they were doing all kinds of things and planning all kinds of things. And I'm like, I don't do any of those scandalous things. How can I be a sex addict? But then I realized that the more I stayed around in the program, the more I realized I had way bigger problems than those people that I was pointing fingers at, because one person in particular, she was still going to work every day. She still had her life. She still had relationships and everything. Her life was not falling apart, whereas mine was completely falling apart because I was not taking care of work. I was disappearing from my family and friends. I was letting things fall through the cracks instead of doing things that I promised. And I was really shocked to meet myself, to meet the real me, because I've been running away from myself for so long and indulging in fantasy for so long. I was not friends with humility or with reality. So once I realized that I really did have a problem, I had trouble believing that God could really love me still, because I felt like of all people to have a problem like this, it shouldn't be me. I was born and raised in church. I personally decided by myself to accept Christ as my Savior when I was 7 years old. I read the Bible a lot. I mean, I love to read anyway, but I love to read the Bible too. And then things I never thought I would have done. And when I came to realize it was an addiction, is because when I looked back at my life and saw all the things that I had done and seen all the lengths that I had gone to, and when somebody says addiction is a progression, it's a progressive disease. And I saw how things had progressed in my life. That's when I realized I really had a problem. But then I was stuck with, I know God can help me. Does he want to help me? Do I deserve the help? At least for somebody who never had a relationship with God, they could have an excuse, but I had no excuse. I felt intense shame for myself, because I used to think of myself as this, upstanding citizen, somebody who helps people and somebody who does the right thing at work. And this was my only thing. Like other people had alcohol, other people had drugs, other people did, they gambled, they did all those things. I didn't do all these things. The only thing I wanted was sex. And love, lots of it. Lots of love and lots of sex. That's what I used to say. And a ton of attention. So thankfully I found this program. But before I found this program, I tried to manage and to nurture my addiction in a whole bunch of ways. And that ended up directly involving several hundred people and indirectly involving I don't know how many people over the years. And I took the skills that I had spent so much time and money developing to build my career to actually run my little acting out world. And I wanted to create like a utopia. So I was bragging to people that, it was deliberate, it was created and curated, and, I wanted it to be like a one-stop shop for my needs and for the needs of people like me, because I didn't feel like I had any place else to go to get what I needed, and to be completely open about what I wanted sexually as well as what I wanted and needed emotionally and otherwise. So I refused to believe that I had a problem, because my little world was also a place not only for acting out, but also if people needed emotional support, financial advice, if they had a death in the family, if they were sick, if somebody else was sick, if people had business problems, like you name it, people came to this with all their problems. And I loved it that way because I felt like I built a family, and I really felt like these people were my family. And but that was really, and yes, I do care. I do still care about those people because, like I said, I tried to make friends. I tried to make it a safe place, so to speak. We celebrated birthdays. I checked up on people. Like, if I didn't hear from people, I would check up on them. Are you okay? What's going on? But by the same token, I was this complete narcissist, and I had all these rules, and I had all these things where if people did not do what I want, when I wanted, how I wanted, then my temper would just completely erupt, and I just eviscerated people. And sometimes I disgusted myself. So I didn't know how people could stand me because I was such a, sometimes I could be very rude. But in any case, they wanted what my little world provided, so they put up with me. So it got to a point with my qualifier where I was being my demanding self, and I thought it was attractive for me to be so demanding and whatever. And I very much objectified him and other people. And I did not pick up on the cues that he was feeling like I did not care about him personally as much as I cared about objectifying him, which I did want. I wanted, like, anything I wanted from this guy. I wanted a life for this person. I was willing to completely give up my life as I knew it to have a life with him. So it was really stupid and crazy. So when I found the program and I would have these emotional meltdowns, I started calling people in the program. Before I learned about all the tools of the program, I was living on phone meetings. And then I also started finding more in-person meetings, and I pretty much didn't care what fellowship. I just wanted to be around people with recovery or people seeking recovery, because when I began to realize the depth of my problems, I was scared. I felt hopeless. I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to stop crying every day. I used to be afraid to be out in public because I was crying so often. And I would cry without warning that I was afraid to be around other people. So I was hiding out in my house instead of, like, going and doing things that I was supposed to do. So at first I simply tried to control my behavior even after I started going to all these meetings, because I felt, well, yeah, those people say they have a problem, and maybe some of them really are sex addicts, but that's not the case with me. I just need to be better disciplined. I just need to have more control of my time, etc. So I just tried to, like, discipline myself, but that was not the problem. The root of the problem is that I was a prodigal daughter. I was estranged from God. I was going to church every day, every Sunday, and participating in things and doing things, but my heart was far from God. And my heart was missing God. And I was trying to fill up on people. I was trying to fill up on conversation. And I was not filling up on God. And the abyss kept getting worse. And I didn't know how to stop. And the only thing I could do was go to meetings and just soaking my brain in program. I bought more than 20 books, audiobooks, ebooks. I was devouring everything I could get my hands on for recovery. I was talking to a lot of people. I literally had like 6 dozen people on my contact list. in my first 2-3 weeks, I think. So far I've been to 500, well over 500 meetings by now, because I realized that I needed a lot of support. I needed a lot of help. I needed a lot of guardrails to protect me and keep me until I could start getting recovery. Then I started working the steps, but I was scared that once I started telling, well, first I got 2 sponsors because I figured people always accuse me of being too intense, and I felt so dirty and ashamed, and I felt that I had taken things to such a degree that once people found out or started finding out, that they would drop me as a sponsee. So I got a regular sponsor and a temporary sponsor. And I was constantly afraid of people in the program leaving me because I don't have anyone else to go. So I just hung on for dear life to these meetings. I started going to one in-person meeting every day, plus at least 4 meetings, phone meetings, because I just had a lot to purge, and I consider myself as somebody in the ICU where I need top-notch care to get me back to life. I wore out the ears of a lot of people, and I started doing that after I went to a meeting one day, and I could not keep up the fact that I was really struggling that day. And the guy who was leading the meeting said, do you have somebody to talk to? And I said, yeah, I have like 60 people. And he's like, well, are you calling them or are you texting them? And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a burden to anybody. And he looked straight at me. He said, be a burden. If somebody doesn't call you back or doesn't respond, it doesn't matter. Just be a burden. Your recovery is important. Be a burden. So ever since then, I just went all out. I reached out to people. I told people when I was lonely. I told people when I was tempted. I started being of service, which really helped me because I would be in meetings and still finding ways to act out. So by being of service, it forced me to pay attention in the meeting. And by being forced to pay attention in the meeting, I felt like my mind started recovering because my attention span was shit. I have this reputation for remembering things for years and years and years, remembering extreme details for years and years and years, and yet I couldn't concentrate and I couldn't remember anything. And it's as I began getting my memory back, as I began getting my presence of mind back, I began to get my energy back all through the program. And because of service, doing service on various calls and in-person meetings. But the most important thing, instead of, I used to have like the triple D approach to working the program before I found better tools. So it was delay, distract, deny. So I would delay. I'd tell myself, well, I'll just wait 3 minutes and I'm not going to act out now. I'll just wait 3 minutes. Or I'll just wait until 10 minutes into the call. Or I'll wait half an hour into the call. Oh, why don't I start doing this? Or I would just distract myself any kind of way I could because that's what I knew to do. I didn't have better tactics, so that's what I did. And as I learned better tools in the program, I started using those better tools in the program. I had a huge, huge problem with the concept of surrender and submit. Again, because of church or maybe the most recent churches that I've been going to, where it's basically a very dominating concept. Even though I myself, I'm a very dominating personality, and it's my way or the highway, and I know better than everybody else. And if you don't kowtow to me, then, out of my face. And that used to be my attitude. So when everybody around me, like all meetings I'm going to, people are talking about surrendering to God, submitting to God. I'm like, what the hell is this? This is a church. So it shocked me that there was so much spirituality here. I was quite ignorant about 12-step meetings before I came into the program, so I didn't know it was something which was all about surrendering to God and stop depending on yourself, having to rely on other people, being there for other people as well as relying on other people. And I'm like, my God, this is a bigger spiritual experience that I've had in these last 150 days or so than I've had all my life combined. And one thing which helped me accept the surrender thing and the submit thing was simply asking people. I had a problem asking people to tell me, and I would say things like, in practical terms, to you, what does it mean to surrender to God? What does it mean to submit to God? Because I'm extremely oppositional to authority, even though I'm very authoritarian myself, but I'm very opposed to authority, and I always kind of manage to find a way to be in control of things. So then people started telling me it's about accepting God. Like, you can't expect God to heal you, to bring you out of this addiction when you won't let him do it. So it's basically saying, hey, God, I want your help. So that's surrendering, saying to God, I can't do this. You can. Please help me. And that's what that was. And that was a lot more palatable and acceptable to my ear and to my attitude, although my attitude needed a whole lot of trimming. A lot. Actually, not even trimming, chopping. And that has happened a lot. My attitude has taken one blow after another. So I guess I've been right-sized, and I'm continuing to be right-sized by circumstance and even by the readings that we do in meetings. I'm very grateful that in the last 149 days, I've been sober 108 days with no relapse. And it's nothing to do with me. On 2 separate meetings, I heard different people say sobriety is a gift. Prior to me hearing that, I had been trying like hell to say, I'm going to try for 12 hours. I would try for 7 hours, but I could never get a full day. And one day after I woke up, I'm like, you know what? If sobriety is a gift, then I want to accept that gift for 3 minutes today. And it started with me wanting 3 minutes of sobriety. I was not trying to go for any kind of record. I attended as many meetings as I have because I was completely desperate. And I also know the lengths to which I would go to do what I want to do. And so if I was not filling up my schedule with one meeting after another, my time would be spent acting out one way or another. So I was hiding. I was in hiding in meetings. I was fighting for my emotional life, for my spiritual life. And going to the meetings did that for me. And I forced myself to share because I had to purge the poison. You're only as sick as your secrets, the saying goes. And I was so shocked hearing other people's shares. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me too. And I was so shocked that people had similar experiences, or even if the experience was not similar, but the feelings that they had, the thoughts that they had. the powerlessness that they experienced, the price that they paid for that behavior, and yet still going back to it. And I'm like, wow, I need help. So I just wanted to hang around people who could give me hope. I also wanted to hear and pay attention to stories of people who were not doing so well and saying, why did that person fall off the wagon? How was this person able to stay on the wagon? And it was always the same thing. Oh, I talk to God. I'm like, what do you mean you talk to God? I mean, I grew up in church, and I thought talking to God was weird because it's basically like talking to yourself. That's the way I saw it. Praying to God, I got it, I did it. But talking to God, like, throughout the day, I'm like, what the heck is that all about? So I actually started practicing doing that, and I would feel weird, and I would stop. But then I'd start again because I'm like, you know what? It felt good to talk to God. And little by little, I started practicing listening to God because I never really knew how to listen to God. I literally asked people, me, in church all my life, I literally was asking people, how do I listen to God? How do I know it's not just my own mind and that I'm really listening to God and God is really talking to me? And I'm like, and especially after everything I've done, why would God want to talk to me? I felt disqualified. And I had all the scriptures in mind with which I could disqualify myself. But one thing I appreciate about program is that we always start with a serenity prayer. We do a moment of silence for people who are still suffering in and out of the room. And one day, it occurred to me that when people say that prayer, that was for me. When people had those moments of silence, that was for me. They didn't know who I am, but they were praying for me before I got here. So that was a sign to me that God loved me. That even before I came to program, there were people thinking about me and ready to help me. I have spent so much money trying to get help fixing the symptoms. There's a lot of bad consequences in my life. Thank God I've never had any kind of disease, which again made me feel guilty because I'm like, for as much as I've done and I've never caught anything, it is a freaking miracle. And I felt guilty because I'm like, people have done far less than I am and they're suffering or they're dead, and here I am alive. Like, why? And there were days I woke up and I asked God why He woke me up. And then I was told to act as if I belong, to act as if I believe God still loves me, and that He still wanted to take care of me, and that He still wanted to do something good with my life after everything I've done. And that really meant a lot to me. I'm sorry, I was planning to be really composed for this qualification. But I'm extremely grateful because I said I don't come from money at all, and my disease has cost me several $100,000. I spent a lot of money trying to get help, and I didn't realize I was trying to fix symptoms, and I never got to the underlying issue of my problems until I found the 12-step program. And I'm getting for free what I had spent a lot of years, a lot of money, a lot of acting out, trying to fix. And I'm getting all this for free. And not only free, but people willing to take their precious time to talk to me, to listen to me, to sponsor me. And I feel like all the ways I wasted my skills, I can now put it at the service of God. I can now put it at the service of people who had no hope like I had no hope, for people who felt condemned or still feel condemned, because I still feel like that sometimes. So that's what's been helping me. I just devour program material. I share what helps me with people. I try not to text people only when I'm falling apart. Sometimes I forget and I just like unload and say, I'm, like crying and carrying on and everything. Like, what are they going through today? So the same habit that I had when I was acting out, to check on people. How are you doing? How's work? How's your family? How's your aunt? How's your whatever? Now I do that with people in the program. And these are people who are healthy. And I feel a ton of guilt still for all of the people I led astray. But that is coming from me still trying to be other people's higher power. I thank God for the opportunity, many opportunities He's given me now. I thank God for doing for me what I could not do for myself. Things started happening better because I'm now treating my husband with respect. He's starting to treat me with respect also. I'm doing kind and loving things for him, and he started to do the same for me. And all that I got from the program. So I'm very grateful and happy to be of service. Thank you for letting me share.